Arden Izulia, Chancellor of Niflheim, at your humble service.
Welcome back to A Year of Final Fantasy in the very last month of this project, which is the month of Bahamut, of course. And during this last month, I wanted to tackle some of the, the high concept forms of Final Fantasy and the systems that it's built on. I recently did a crystal video last month looking at the crystals in the franchise, how they affect each game's narrative in a different way. And you could probably think of this as a kind of companion video to that. And today we're going to be talking about the magic systems of Final Fantasy and how they're really incorporated into the different games. First and foremost, magics, especially in the first series, are generally completely governed by the crystals, the 4 elemental crystals, and it's implied that the crystals are some kind of conduit that power those energies. However, it's definitely not just that simple, and in fact there's some kind of conflicting stuff here. So in a broad sense, the very first Final Fantasy game set the standards of the very foundations of magic with its introduction of its mages, not necessarily wizards, though there are later on. But anyway, there's a black mage and a white mage, each wielding obviously the corresponding different colors of magic, black and white. Yes, there are red mages too, and believe me, I haven't forgotten, but for most of the series, red mages use just a combination of both. They're generally not as powerful. Later on, the red mage did get its own red magic kind of stuff, but that's something else completely. So while there are 2 broad categories in Final Fantasy, at least in the first game, the magic that you gain from black and white magic doesn't necessarily kind of incorporate all of the crystal like earth, fire, wind, and water, although some of them are definitely there. It's a really weird thing, which is why I said that you could argue that maybe the crystals aren't the things that power the magic itself, but then again they are. I don't know, it's a big deal. But the point here is that we actually don't have 4 elements. We actually just really have a triad, maybe if you wanted to count the cures as elements as well, but we have fire, ice, and lightning. Those are the basic elemental trio that pretty much appear in every single Final Fantasy game that at least I can remember. And most of these are relegated to offensive magic. Defensive magic, like I said, is normally just relegated to cures and, the holy element if you have a holy attack, something like that. So it doesn't necessarily, like I said, line up one-to-one with those 4 elements. Later on in the franchise, we do get a lot more different ones other than fire, ice, and lightning. We get wind, especially gravity kind of magics and stuff like that. First introduced in Final Fantasy III, we have our summon magic. Summons have changed drastically over the series, especially in the latter half of the franchise. Initially, you use a summon that was basically just a super powerful version of a spell that you already have. For example, if you summon Ifrit, you're going to do some kind of fire spell, Shiva ice, Rama lightning, and so forth. We've done actually a lot of summon videos talking about these characters and where they came from in real world mythology, so if that interests you, you should definitely check those out. As summons became more and more prevalent throughout the series, they started to become more apparent than just super versions of spells, and some of them actually just became true allies in your fight. These manifest in a bunch of different ways though. For example, in Final Fantasy VI, you can actually junction, that's a Final Fantasy VIII term, you can attach them to you and learn different magic. So in that way, they're kind of an ally. And like I just talked about, junctioning, that actually is a very similar concept in Final Fantasy VIII. However, 8 kind of just turns up everything to 11. You're not just learning magic, you're actually building your character from which summons that you equip to yourselves. In Final Fantasy X, summons are one of the most integral parts of the story, as they are in Final Fantasy VIII, but 10 changed the game completely, actually putting the summons on the battlefield with you, and they use their own different techniques and spells, and you can level them up and all kinds of stuff like that. It's a really cool thing to see, especially for the first time in the series. Final Fantasy XIII did something similar, I guess, but the bonds here were formed of necessity of being a l'Cie, so the summon magic's just really kind of another form of elemental magic, but it's handled in a different way, more akin to Final Fantasy X. And the next school or type of magic is my personal favorite, and it's referred to as time magic, used by obviously time mages. Time magic initially was relegated to mostly support magic, but eventually it was paired up with the outer space kind of cosmic things, and that resulted in its very own form of time magic being created. Time magic, as you may guess, is more of a buffing or debuffing class, specifically messing with the time options, like how quickly your ATB gauge fills up with haste or slow, or maybe stop, something like that. Like I said, they did kind of meld them in with the more cosmic space-based magics, so we do have stuff like gravity and comet or meteor and that kind of stuff, so it's really a space-time type of deal. Blue magic is next, and blue magic is a strange one because it's not really magical. I mean, it is, but not in the way that you would think it would be. Blue magic's really just the assimilation of different enemy abilities, and some of them do have quite the magical qualities like White Wind or something similar, which is like a cure spell or a regen spell. But other blue magics like Goblin Punch, that, I don't know, that doesn't really give me a resemblance of any kind of traditional magic that I know. So it's a weird one, blue magic. And those are really the big groups of magic, at least the prominent ones that I want to talk about. In later games, you may see something like Freya's Dragon Magic, which is just kind of like a specialized blue magic, kind of. Learned a different way, of course. There's also sword magic, which is just black magic applied to different melee attacks. Geomancy's in there too, specializing in earth magic or earth type of environment magic, not necessarily the element of earth itself. And the list goes on and on and on and on and on. Just a real quick list of the lesser bodies. We have ninjutsu, bardic magic, dark magic. The structure and nomenclature of magic is something that I really wanted to talk about too. Initially for the US releases of the games, we were simply given a magic name, like a spell name, and just a number after it to indicate how, powerful it was. For example, if you had a cure spell, you'd have cure 1, cure 2, cure 3, maybe even sometimes higher. And that numbering system actually worked for quite a while for us, but it was Final Fantasy VIII that kind of really heralded the melding of the naming of magic, in which case we started to see the magic end with these special suffixes rather than the numerical approach that they had done before. Of course, those suffixes, I don't even know if that's a word. We have the A, the G, and sometimes the Aja. So for example, if you're going to cast a low-level fire spell, it'd be just fire. However, if it was a fire 2 that we would normally know, it's Fira. Then you have fire 3, which would be Firaga, and some of the spells, like I said, go actually further than that. Cure is a good one because they have a Cure Aja, which is, I don't know, think of it as a Cure 4 of sorts. Though sometimes Ajas have different targetings and stuff like that. But anyway, just think of it as the 4th version of that spell. And the way magic is used in these settings of the games is pretty interesting, especially with the latter half of the series. Sure, in the original games, elements are tied to crystals or whatever, and then like if the wind crystal goes dark, you don't have wind magic or something like that. Of course, that actually didn't really apply in the first game, so that may not be the best example. But anyway, just general ambient magic was had in the first games. However, Final Fantasy VII really did something special with magic, and they made that the lifeblood of the planet that actually plays a very, very important role in the game. Literally, magic, life, and death all are connected. In fact, materia, which is most people think of as a mechanical thing that Final Fantasy VII does, is definitely linked to the story aspect, where materia is just crystallized versions of Mako, which is actually the life energy of the planet. Other games have a similar concept as well, such as Final Fantasy X and XIV. Final Fantasy VIII kinda did this a little bit, at least in my eyes, where you could draw magic from people, which would mean that the magic is innate within them, which is going back to the life stream magic stuff. I don't know. It's not technically the life stream, but the fact that you can withdraw magic from people is kind of interesting. The life stream concept is definitely relevant in Final Fantasy IX, in that souls were being transformed to use as energy in the way that the mist was presented in Final Fantasy IX. It's just a twist on the life stream concept that Final Fantasy VII initially put forward. At least that's what it always felt like to me. In Final Fantasy XIV, they used the life stream basically wholesale. And that's it for the magic of Final Fantasy. What are your favorite magic systems or games that use particular magic systems in the franchise? Let me know in the comments below. And next time we're going to be looking at the big stuff. Like, this is the stuff everyone's wanted. We're going to be talking about the big plot twists of Final Fantasy. It's actually going to be divided up into 2 videos, talking about 1 through 7 first and then 8 through 15. Completely spoiler filled, so we're going to get all into it. And as always, until next time, Mr. Warriors, keep on gaming.